The dashboard clock read 11:07 p.m., its dull green numbers glowing against the darkness of my truck's cab. My name is Daniel. I'm 39 years old, a construction foreman from Ridgewood, Ohio, and tonight I was parked on the gravel shoulder outside a country lodge with my two oldest friends, Victor and Paul, waiting for the kind of truth no husband wants. The silence between us was heavy, like none of us wanted to breathe too loudly. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel, though I didn't even notice until Victor reached over and stilled my hand. "Save that energy," he muttered, his voice low but sharp. "If she's in there with him, you'll need it." Paul sat in the back seat, leaning forward between us, his elbows on his knees. He wasn't the kind of guy to talk much, and tonight he hadn't said more than 10 words. But every so often I'd feel his eyes on me, steady and quiet, like he was trying to keep me from falling apart. I swallowed hard and looked at the warm lights glowing through the lodge windows. Clara was supposed to be out with the girls, the same line she'd used a dozen times over the past month. A few weeks back, I might have believed her. But then I found those messages on her tablet, the one she'd left on the kitchen counter when she was rushing out. Sweet little notes from a guy named Eric, the kind of words I hadn't heard from her in years. At first I thought I'd misread them. Maybe it was just some old friend, a misunderstanding. But the messages were filled with inside jokes, heart emojis, and the kind of affection I used to get back when we were young and stupid in love. I hadn't confronted her, not right away. I wanted to see the truth with my own eyes before I accused her of something this ugly. Victor sighed loudly, leaning back against the seat. "Man, if she's cheating, I swear I'll—" "Don't," I cut him off. My voice sounded harsher than I meant, but I didn't have the patience for his fire tonight. "Let me handle this. If we see anything, we leave it to me." He shot me a side glance, his jaw tightening. "Fine, but if that guy tries anything—" Paul put a hand on Victor's shoulder. "Let's just wait. No one's doing anything yet." His calm voice had always been the counterweight to Victor's temper, and I was glad he was here. The minutes crawled by, each one stretching longer than the last. At 11:23 p.m., I saw her. Clara stepped into view through a wide window, wearing that pale blue sweater I'd bought her for Christmas. She wasn't alone. Eric stood beside her, tall, well-groomed, the kind of guy who probably worked in an office instead of sweating through his days like I did. Clara laughed at something he said, her head tipping toward his shoulder, her hand brushing his arm like it belonged there. My chest tightened. I felt my pulse in my ears, a heavy pounding rhythm that drowned out everything else. There it was. Proof. Victor's hands curled into fists. "You see that? You see her?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on Clara, who was leaning into Eric like she used to lean into me when we'd sit together on the couch, watching bad movies. For a split second, I thought maybe I should look away. But I couldn't. It was like watching my whole life fall apart in slow motion. Paul let out a low sigh, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, man. I was hoping we were wrong." I gripped the steering wheel so hard it creaked under my hands. My mouth felt dry, and my thoughts scattered like broken glass. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but nothing prepared me for how much it hurt. Victor leaned forward. "So what now? You want to walk in there and show them who's boss?" "No," I said quietly. My voice was steadier than I expected. "Not yet." For a long moment, none of us spoke. We just sat there in the dark, 3 men watching a woman I thought I knew better than anyone. And as I stared at Clara's smiling face, I realized something hard and cold had settled in my chest. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't let her walk away thinking she had the last laugh. Tonight, I'd find my own kind of justice. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped out of the truck, shutting the door with a quiet click. Victor and Paul followed close behind, their boots crunching on the gravel. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint laughter drifting from inside the lodge. Clara's laughter. It cut through me like a blade, but I forced myself to focus. I grabbed the tool bag from the bed of the truck. Inside were wire cutters, a wrench, and a pair of smoke bombs Paul had picked up earlier. I didn't ask where he got them, and I didn't care. All I knew was that this was going to be quick and clean. Victor leaned close, his breath clouding in the cold. "You sure about this, man? Because once we start, there's no turning back." "I've never been more sure of anything," I said quietly. My voice surprised even me, steady, controlled. "She chose this." Paul gave a slow nod, his eyes serious. "Then we do it your way. We moved around the side of the lodge, sticking close to the shadows. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a couple of cars under the yellow light of a street lamp. My heart was pounding, but I kept my steps measured. I had been in enough tense situations on construction sites, high beams, bad weather, to know the value of calm hands and sharp focus. The outdoor power box was on the far wall, half hidden by a stack of firewood. I crouched beside it, pulling the wire cutters from the bag. My hands didn't shake. I found the main line, gritted my teeth, and snipped. The result was immediate. Every light inside the lodge flickered, then went black. The sudden silence of cut power was followed by muffled voices. I heard Clara's laugh vanish mid-breath, replaced by a confused murmur. Victor smirked. "Showtime." "Not yet," I said. "We stick to the plan." Paul handed me one of the smoke bombs, his fingers brushing mine. "This is your call, Daniel. Just say the word." I crouched by the front steps, the door just a few feet away. Through the window, I could see silhouettes moving in the dark, Clara's voice rising with a nervous edge. I lit the fuse, the soft hiss cutting through the night, and rolled the first bomb under the door. Within seconds, the smoke began to seep inside, thin tendrils curling through the cracks. I heard Eric's voice now, tense and commanding, telling Clara to stay calm. But the unease in his tone made me smile grimly. "Good. Let them sweat." Victor leaned closer, whispering, "They're spooked." "Want me to seal the side door?" "Do it," I said, my eyes locked on the shifting shadows inside. The confusion was growing. Clara coughed, her voice sharp and panicked now. I felt something cold settle over me. I wasn't just watching her anymore. I was in control. The smoke swirled like gray ghosts against the windows, curling upward into the rafters. Inside, the silhouettes of Clara and Eric jerked and stumbled as they tried to make sense of the sudden darkness. Their laughter was gone, replaced by quick, panicked voices. I stepped closer to the window, my boots sinking into the cold mud, my breath steady. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Victor reappeared from the side of the building, giving me a quick nod. "All exits locked," he whispered. His voice was low, almost eager. "They're not going anywhere." Paul stayed a few feet behind me, his calm presence like a shadow. "Take it slow, Daniel. Let them see you when you're ready," he murmured. Through the haze inside, I saw Clara cling to Eric's arm. She looked nothing like the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. This version of her was skittish, scared, and guilty. Eric pulled out his phone, probably trying to use the flashlight, but it only cut through a fraction of the thickening smoke. I stepped forward until I was just outside the window, the glass reflecting a faint outline of my face. Clara's gaze suddenly shifted, and our eyes met. Even through the glass and haze, I saw her face drain of color. She froze, her lips parting as if she wanted to say my name but couldn't. "Daniel," she finally whispered, her voice muffled by the pain. I didn't respond. I just stood there, my expression flat, letting the silence weigh on her. The fear in her eyes told me she understood why I was here. Eric noticed her sudden change and turned toward me, squinting through the smoke. "Who the hell are you?" he barked, his voice sharp but shaky. "You can't just—" I took one step closer, my boots crunching against the gravel, and the words caught in his throat. I didn't need to speak. My silence said everything, every ounce of betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment of rage that had built up over the past month. He shifted nervously, glancing at Clara as if expecting her to explain. Clara gripped his arm tighter, her voice trembling. "Daniel, please, this isn't what it looks like." I tilted my head slightly, my eyes never leaving hers. She faltered, her words dying in the smoke-filled air. Eric tried again, his voice louder now, but there was a crack in it. "Hey man, you need to back off. This is private property, you can't just—" I raised a hand slowly, not to threaten but to quiet him. Something in the way I moved, controlled, deliberate, made him stop mid-sentence. He swallowed hard, taking a step back. Clara's breathing quickened. Behind me, Victor muttered, "Look at him. He's terrified." I didn't respond. I just stood there, motionless, until the smoke inside grew thicker and forced them farther into the room. Clara coughed, clutching her sweater like it could shield her from what was coming. Her eyes stayed locked on me, wide and pleading, but I gave her nothing. No anger, no mercy, just silence. When Eric tried to move toward the window, I stepped forward again, closing the distance until I was just inches from the glass. He stopped dead in his tracks. For the first time, I saw the fear flash across his face. He knew I wasn't going to shout or argue. I wasn't here for words. Clara's lips trembled as she whispered, "Oh my God." I turned slightly, signaling Victor and Paul with a nod. The next phase was coming. Clara's phone buzzed inside the lodge, its glow faint through the haze. I had dialed her number from outside, standing just a few feet from the window, my voice flat as soon as she answered. "Pick up," I said when I heard the shuffle of her footsteps. She obeyed, her tone trembling. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "What is this?" "You tell me," I replied, my eyes locked on hers through the glass. "Who's Eric? Is he the guy who sends you heart emojis while I'm working double shifts? Or the one you lie to my face about every Friday night?" My voice was steady, but the weight of each word landed like a hammer. She stammered, "Daniel, it's not—" "Don't bother," I cut her off, my tone turning cold. "I've heard every excuse in the book. Now the whole town will hear the truth too, if that's what you want." Eric stepped forward, trying to take control of the moment. "Listen, man, this is between you and her. You need to calm down." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Calm? You think you can talk your way out of this, Eric? You're standing in a smoke-filled room with a married woman, and I'm supposed to shake your hand like a gentleman?" Victor chuckled under his breath behind me. "Hit him harder," he muttered, but I didn't need to. Words were enough. Eric raised his voice, trying to sound authoritative. "You don't scare me, buddy." I leaned closer to the phone. "That's good, Eric. Because what's coming next isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to make you remember tonight for the rest of your life." I nodded to Paul, who silently passed me the second smoke bomb. I lit it and rolled it under the door without breaking eye contact with them. Clara's voice cracked through the line. "Daniel, please stop this!" "No," I said, almost whispering. "I stopped being your husband the minute you decided I wasn't enough." The second wave of smoke billowed through the lodge, curling around their legs. Eric coughed, his bravado slipping fast. Clara's phone rustled as she tried to find a way out, panic taking over her voice. "We're sorry. Just stop. Please, Daniel, let's talk." "Talk?" I repeated, watching them fumble with the door I knew Victor had already secured. "You had months to talk. Now, you can explain yourself to everyone watching." Behind me, I heard the click of phone cameras. A couple of curious neighbors from down the road had stepped outside, recording the scene as Clara and Eric banged on the door, desperate to escape. I watched them finally push through the side exit that Victor had left partially unlatched, coughing and gasping as they stumbled into the yard. I ended the call and stepped closer, my voice carrying in the night. "This marriage is over," I said, my words sharp as steel. "You've humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure the truth doesn't hide in the dark." Clara's knees buckled as Eric wrapped an arm around her. The murmurs from the neighbors turned into whispers, and I saw the glow of a camera flash. I didn't care. Let them all see what she had done. The morning after the lodge incident, my phone was already buzzing before sunrise. By noon, I had more than 50 missed calls, half of them from unknown numbers. The videos had spread faster than I expected. A neighbor had posted a clip of Clara and Eric stumbling out of the smoke-filled lodge, coughing and screaming, and it was already making the rounds in town. I didn't watch it, but Victor texted me, "Brother, you went viral. Everyone's talking. You're a damn legend." Legend or not, I didn't feel like one. Sitting alone in my kitchen, I stared at my cold coffee. The silence in my house felt heavier than usual. Clara's name popped up on my screen every few minutes. Calls, texts, voicemails. All of them went ignored. I didn't want her apologies or her explanations. Not anymore. By that afternoon, friends and coworkers were blowing up my phone too. Some sent messages of support. "You did what any man would do." Others wanted details, asking if the rumors were true. Even my foreman buddy from another site called to say the guys at the yard were siding with me. It should have felt like validation, but instead I felt hollow. Revenge didn't fix anything. It just left a bigger hole. Victor and Paul stopped by that evening, bringing a 6-pack and 2 large pizzas. Victor slapped me on the back like we just won a championship game. "You should have seen Eric's face when he ran into that smoke. Priceless." Paul, ever the quiet one, just sat across from me, his eyes full of concern. "You okay?" he asked softly. I shrugged. "I thought I'd feel better. I don't." Victor frowned, leaning on the counter. "What do you mean you don't?" "You nailed them, Dan. Everybody knows who the real snake is now. That's a win." "Maybe," I said, picking at the edge of a pizza box. "But I spent 15 years with Clara, and all I feel now is empty." Paul nodded as if he understood. It'll take time. You don't just burn something that big down and walk away clean. The next couple of days blurred together. More texts came in from Clara, each one more desperate than the last. Please, Daniel, can we talk? You don't understand what really happened. I love you. I made a mistake. Just answer me. I deleted them all. By the third night, I turned off my phone completely. I didn't need to hear her voice or see her tears. The only people I allowed through were Victor and Paul. They checked in every day, making sure I ate, making sure I didn't spiral. But in the quiet moments, when the house was dark and the world went still, I felt the weight of it all pressing down. I had exposed Clara, but I wasn't free, not yet. 3 days passed before Clara showed up at my door. I hadn't answered a single one of her calls or texts, but she must have known I wouldn't hide from her forever. When I saw her through the peephole, she looked like a ghost, eyes red and swollen, her hair pulled into a messy knot, wearing the same coat I'd seen her in the night at the lodge. I opened the door, but only halfway. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, can we talk? Just for 5 minutes." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but I stepped back instead, letting her inside. She stood in the middle of my living room, like she didn't recognize it anymore. Maybe she didn't. The man she betrayed wasn't the man standing in front of her now. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she started, her words coming fast. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Eric was just someone I could talk to when things between us. "Stop," I cut in, my tone colder than I intended. "Don't give me the things were rough speech. If we had problems, you could have come to me. Instead, you laughed with him while I worked myself half to death for this house. For us." She flinched like the words stung. "I still love you," she whispered. "I made a mistake, but I never stopped loving you. Daniel, please, we can fix this." I stared at her, searching her face for even a shred of the woman I married. "Fix this? Do you have any idea how many lies you told me? The nights you said you were working late or out with friends? I kept believing you, Clara. I wanted to believe you." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she stepped closer. "I'll do anything. I'll end things with Eric. I already have. Just don't throw everything away. We've been together 15 years. I shook my head slowly. "You threw it away the moment you chose him over me. The marriage is done, Clara. There's nothing left to save." For a long second, she just stood there, sobbing quietly. Finally, she nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "If that's what you want, then I guess this is goodbye." I walked her to the door, my chest heavy but certain. "Goodbye, Clara." I watched her walk down the driveway, her shoulders hunched like she was carrying every lie she ever told me. For the first time in weeks, I felt both relief and sorrow, mixed into something I couldn't name. After Clara left, my house felt like a shell. Her things were still in the closet, her perfume faint in the hall, but it all felt foreign. I didn't know what to do with the silence. That first week I barely ate, just sat at the kitchen table staring at my calloused hands, wondering if I had let her destroy more of me than I realized. Victor was the one who finally dragged me out of it. He showed up unannounced, pounding on the door until I opened it. "You're done sitting in this tomb," he said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "Come with me. We're hitting the gym. You need to sweat this poison out." Paul joined us too, quieter but firm in his own way. "You don't have to do everything today," he told me, "but you can't stay stuck. One step at a time, man." The first session was brutal. My muscles burned, my lungs screamed, but after an hour of lifting and running, I felt something shift, a sliver of control creeping back. We made it a routine, every other day. The weight of the betrayal felt lighter with every bead of sweat. One Saturday, I decided to tackle the house. I pulled Clara's clothes from the closet, stacking them in boxes. Old photos, framed vacation shots, birthday cards, all of it went into storage. Every time I taped a box shut, it felt like I was cutting another thread tying me to the past. That night, I found my guitar in the corner of the spare room, covered in dust. I hadn't played in months. I tuned the strings, the familiar sound filling the empty house. My fingers were stiff at first, but after a few chords, the music came back, rough but real. For the first time since the lodge, I felt something close to peace. Victor noticed the change. "See? You're still in there," he said after a gym session, clapping me on the back. "You're tougher than this mess." Paul nodded in agreement. "Healing isn't about revenge or forgetting," he said. It's about finding who you are without all that weight. In the evenings, I made a habit of sitting on the porch with my guitar, letting the sunset bleed over the yard while I played. The silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. It felt like space, space I could fill with my own voice, my own life. Victor's backyard was buzzing with conversation the night I met Sophie. He'd invited a few friends over for a casual barbecue, insisting that I needed to be around normal people again, instead of spending every night alone with my guitar and dark thoughts. I almost didn't go, but Paul showed up at my house and refused to leave until I got in his truck. Sophie was standing near the picnic table, laughing with Victor's wife over something silly. She had this open, warm smile that felt genuine, not forced like so many people I'd met lately. Victor waved me over with a grin. "Daniel, this is Sophie. She's the only reason this party doesn't look like three guys sitting around eating burnt burgers." She laughed, holding out her hand. "Hi, Daniel. I've heard a lot about you. Hopefully, only good things." "Mostly lies," I said with a small smile, shaking her hand. It surprised me how easy her presence felt. We ended up talking while everyone else drifted toward the grill. She asked about music when she spotted the calluses on my fingers, and we spent 20 minutes talking about guitars, old rock bands, and the songs I used to play. It felt natural in a way I hadn't experienced in months. With Clara, every conversation lately had felt like walking through broken glass, careful and tense. With Sophie, I wasn't guarded. She didn't ask about the scandal or the videos. She just talked to me like I was a person, not a story. Over the next couple of weeks, we started meeting for coffee. The first time, I expected awkward silence or polite small talk, but she made it easy. We sat by the window of a little cafe downtown, swapping stories about road trips and places we wanted to see someday. I realized I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. She never pushed me to talk about Clara, but she didn't shy away when I mentioned the divorce. "You don't have to be ready for anything right now," she said once, her voice calm. "Just be yourself. That's enough." There was something healing about her patience. It wasn't like falling in love, not yet. It was more like finding solid ground after months of stumbling through mud. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could trust someone again. By the time fall rolled around, Sophie's steady presence had changed me. I wasn't walking around like a man with an open wound anymore. Still, some part of me felt unfinished, like Clara had never truly faced what she did. She walked away from our marriage acting like she was the victim, spinning half-truths to anyone who would listen. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore, but I wanted her lies exposed for what they were. Through an old buddy who worked in HR, I found out Clara had a new job at a local marketing firm. Word was, she'd been dating one of the managers there. I didn't care about her love life, but I did care that she'd built this polished version of herself, pretending the past didn't exist. So, I sent her reminders. Nothing threatening, just copies of those messages with Eric. A photo of the lodge, time-stamped the night everything blew up. I wanted her to remember that she couldn't rewrite history. Victor thought I was wasting my time. "Man, let it go. You're doing good now," he said one evening over beers. But Paul saw it differently. "Maybe he needs this last step to close the book," Paul said. He wasn't wrong. The turning point came when I learned Clara's firm was hosting a big gala. Sophie and I got invited through a mutual acquaintance. I debated going, but when Sophie squeezed my hand and said, "If this gives you peace, I'll be there with you," I knew I had to face it. The night of the gala, I walked in with Sophie by my side. She wore a deep green dress that made heads turn, and I felt like I had finally stepped out of the shadow Clara left behind. People whispered when they saw me, but I didn't care. I wasn't there for them. Clara spotted me halfway through the evening. Her confident smile faltered. She was giving a speech standing under the bright lights when her phone buzzed. I'd scheduled a message, a simple screenshot of her chat with Eric, the one where she called me boring and predictable, sent right as she started talking about trust and integrity. She froze mid-sentence. I watched the color drain from her face as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Her new boyfriend, standing at a nearby table, glanced at her phone and his jaw tightened. Clara stumbled over her words, then muttered something about feeling unwell before rushing off the stage. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I just stood there, Sophie's hand warm in mine, as the truth spoke for itself. For the first time, I felt calm. Clara's facade had finally cracked, and I didn't have to lift a finger. The night of the gala ended with me and Sophie driving home in silence, but it wasn't the heavy, painful silence I used to know. It was calm. For the first time since all this began, I felt something close to peace. Clara's mask had slipped, and I no longer felt the need to carry the weight of her betrayal. She had shown everyone who she really was without me saying a word. The next morning, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the early sunlight stretch across the yard. I thought about the past few months, the anger, the humiliation, the revenge, and how none of it had really brought me happiness. What made me feel lighter was realizing I didn't care about Clara anymore. Not in anger, not in love. She was just someone I used to know. Sophie joined me on the porch, her hair messy from sleep, her smile soft and warm. She didn't ask questions about Clara or the gala. She just handed me another mug of coffee and sat beside me, her presence enough. "You look lighter," she said, studying my face. "Like you're finally breathing again." "I think I am," I said. For a long time, I thought revenge would fix me, but it doesn't. It just keeps the wound open. She nodded, not trying to fill the silence. That was something I loved about her. She didn't push. She just understood. Later that week, Clara called one last time. I didn't answer, but I listened to her voicemail. Her voice was broken and tired. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I don't know who I am without you. I hope you can forgive me someday." I didn't feel anger anymore, just a dull sadness. I whispered to the empty room, "I forgive you." But it wasn't for her. It was for me. Forgiving her meant I could finally move on. That evening, Sophie and I took a walk by the river. The water was calm, reflecting the orange glow of sunset. I slipped my hand into hers, realizing that moving forward wasn't just about healing. It was about building something new, something honest. As we stood there, I felt a quiet certainty settle in my chest. Clara's betrayal had nearly broken me, but it also taught me something I'd forgotten: how to value myself. With Sophie's hand in mine, I knew I was done looking backward. The past was over. The future, for the first time in a long time, was wide open.